How are you?
Hi Dave, I'm great. How you doing?
I'm going really, really well. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat to us today.
My pleasure.
Well, Jocelyn, I wanted to start off by saying congratulations on the film. It is an absolutely amazing film, so congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So tell us a little bit about what your first thoughts were on this film when you sat down and read the script.
One of the first things that really jumped out and grabbed me was just the whole setting, the mythology of the place. Even in the script, you could really visualize what it was going to be and how scary and atmospheric and knowing also that Mickey was going to be working with the cinematographer Mac Fiskin, who's just so talented. I felt like I knew immediately that it was going to look gorgeous and that it was going to be a striking movie. And then on top of the visuals that were written into the script, also, like I said, kind of just the lore and the mythology of this place and the family secrets that were going to be revealed were really intriguing.
Did you start to imagine places that are like this in a bid to try and get a feel for the character and get a feel for the place as well?
Sure, and that was honestly like one of the first things that Mickey talked about was that this is the place that we shot, a little town called New Smyrna Beach, was actually where he and his family used to go on vacation. He's from this place down in Florida, like an hour away. And so he was kind of talking about what it feels like to be in a deserted beach tourist town when it's off season and how eerie that can be. And then what it feels like also to kind of be like a quote unquote city slicker, an urbane person who comes to a small town environment, and how that fish out of water, like that discomfort can play. So those were all the sense of place in this was very strong from the beginning.
Yeah. For you personally, how did you take yourself to that place? Did you start to think of times in your life when you felt trapped and things like that, or how did you get yourself to that place?
Yes, yeah. What's interesting is that she's trapped, but she's also in this big environment on her own. So she's like this isolated, lonely kind of figure alone in a deserted place. So that hasn't happened to me so much, I guess, in a town, but I can imagine feeling that way sometimes, even when I was on set and like walking on the beach alone at night, when you feel very tiny in a big place and you don't know who's around. And those were kind of some ways to get into that, to feel isolated, but on an island.
Now, for our listeners who are listening to this show at the moment that haven't had the privilege of being able to watch the film, tell us a little bit about Marie as a character. What were the things that struck you about her when you first started to get to know her as a character?
Yeah, Marie is still reeling from her mother's death. She's had kind of a rocky relationship with her, so there's this sense of things that are still unsaid or unclear about her mother's past. And when she learns that her grave has been vandalized and she's called down to deal with it, it's kind of the last thing that she wants to be doing. She's trying to get this behind her, but she has to go down there and take care of it. And and then like just thinking about what it's like to learn such a doozy of a family secret after her mom has passed, and what it would be like to have to handle that without being able to talk to her about it. That's something I thought about a lot. And also that Maria is kind of a loner already. Like she doesn't like to have to rely on people. She maybe doesn't have too many close friends. And so I was thinking about that also, and that she's a skeptical person and doesn't want to believe what's happening in front of her eyes. But as the story moves on, what seems implausible is actually undeniable, and she must accept it in order to survive and escape this place. So there was a lot to play kind of psychologically, even though she's alone by herself for most of the film.
Did you try to talk to people that have been through something similar with a family secret coming out like that? Because I know in my own family, we had a huge family secret that was revealed after my grandfather passed away, and it rocked the family to the absolute core. Did you try and find people that had been through something like that to talk to?
Um, I mean, I guess I don't know anyone who's maybe been through specifically that. I did talk to some people who, learned shocking family secrets while they're still alive, and then trying to cope with that and deal with that. But it's true. It's this the emotion that comes from and as you probably know, like when you can't talk to that person and process it properly. It's just you feel trapped in that secret as well.
You mentioned before that Mickey took you to a town that he'd spent a lot of time in when he was growing up. How much were you able to draw from the atmosphere of that town itself for your performance when you were on set?
Yeah, the town that we shot in is the same town that he went to, and it's this little beach town that's basically been untouched since the 1940s. It had a little main street with the Art Deco style signs, and it definitely felt like a place unstuck or stuck in time. So that definitely had a eerie kind of Twilight Zone feel to it. And then we also had the great privilege of shooting on the Apollo National Seashore, so it kind of had this juxtaposition of like this little town and then this very lush tropical jungly place right on the ocean, which was so dramatic and so atmospheric, and we had tons of fog. The fog machine was working overtime. So yeah, just that feeling of fogginess and that Marie's understanding is so foggy. It definitely helps the motif, and it helps me get in character as well.
There's a really dark mood and atmosphere to this film. Was that something that you could feel when you were filming it as well?
Yeah. I mean, just shooting at night, of course, shooting with lots of fog and dense jungle, and then being the times that we got to shoot right on the ocean, which was just so epic. And we also had a really great few days on the bridge, which kind of had like this Inception feel to it, of like this enormous drawbridge being right on that. So yeah, all of the set pieces and the locations on this film, certainly we could all feel it when we were there. It's such a special place, and that kind of production value, you can't recreate that anywhere else. Like just being in the elements and feeling the vibe of this place, it was very, very helpful creatively.
You mentioned earlier that when you read the scripts, one of the things that really drew you to this film was the fact that Mickey was directing and the other people that you'd be able to work with. What did you know about Mickey as a director before the film, and why did that excite you so much about being able to work with him?
Mickey is he has such an exuberance about him and about filmmaking. He just like lives to create these cinematic moments, and on set he was just such a great problem solver. And I had seen Darling and I'd seen Carnage Park. Both I was fans of both of those films, and I love that all of his movies are just so distinct, and that he's willing to kind of experiment and play around in the genre, and not stick to one thing. And the chance, as you say, to work with Richard Brake, who's just such a powerhouse, and Melora Walters was amazing to work with. I loved our scenes together, to have like more of that emotional conflict. And then with Joe Swanberg, who's just such a naturalistic, a great improviser, and someone who I've known for a long time and always wanted to work with. And Jeremy Gardner, Mickey really brought together a casting of so many different types of characters that Marie gets to bounce off of, which was just really fun to play.
You mentioned before as well that the atmosphere and the world that Mickey was trying to create was so strong in the screenplay. Did you then sit down and have a big talk to him about what kind of paranormal world he was trying to bring to the screen with the film?
Yeah, and like a lot of filmmakers, like they talk in film references, like so they'll bring something up. It's not necessarily it's just the language that they use to talk about what the tone of a certain scene is going to be, or in his case, he talked a lot also about fiction, about Faulkner and Shirley Jackson, because it did have this Southern Gothic type feel. So we talked about A Rose for Emily, a Faulkner story, and Summer People, Shirley Jackson's story that kind of encompasses these things. And we also talked about Carnival of Souls and Red Desert, and these are kind of like things just for isolation and tone. And yeah, we it's very fun for me to hear what a filmmaker's references are, and then how we can jump off from there.
Talking of other films, you have now been in some of the most iconic and important horror films of this generation. Was horror always a genre that you were fascinated with when you were growing up?
It's been an evolution. I mean, when I was younger, I grew up in Connecticut, and I loved ghost stories, and I loved the Salem witch trials, and I was always a reader. So growing up, I loved Goosebumps, and as I got older and started getting into film, I would say I was I'm still pretty squeamish about violence and gore, but I've always been very interested in dark psychological stories, and then when I started working in the genre, it's been great to just learn from every filmmaker that I work with, and keep on expanding my frame of reference, and learning what I like. And now, I mean, I have so much respect for what can happen in the genre, because it really encompasses everything. It can be light and comedic in places, but it's always high stakes. Usually it has something to do with trauma or secrets, and there's a lot for actors to work with in the genre.
For the young actors that listen to this show, what do you find the most challenging working in this genre? Because I was actually just talking to my wife last night after we watched the film about the fact that I always respect actors and actresses that do genre acting, because you guys get put through the absolute ringer with a lot of the roles that you are in. What's the most challenging thing do you find working in the genre?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, like when you're actually shooting, and like the physical challenges of doing a 3-week shoot and having to, run so many miles, cry, scream. But those are things that it just feels so good, like, to be and done with it also. Like the best moments are like when you're driving home in the pass van after work and thinking through the day and thinking of what you got, and everyone is just so excited and like amped up to be there, to actually be on set and making something. It's so cool. And also the aspect of like shooting at night has this real kind of, it really brings people together, and you feel like you're the only ones in the world and you're doing something cool. And I mean, I guess the hardest part is trying to leave it behind. Sometimes it's like you really work yourself up and you're really like sad and upset. I guess just exhaustion, but that's part of any acting job, I guess.
Definitely. Now, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly. So to finish up, what would you like to say to everybody out there before they sit down to watch the film on Shudder?
Well, I just hope that people enjoy the ride. It has this dream logic, and you're kind of along for the ride with Marie, and you'll be learning about this world and her family's past at the same time that she is. And I hope it's as disturbing and visually striking and emotional for you as it was for me.